Hey guys, Leftward Out here, and here's your guide to Vesper's host. Truthfully, the dungeon isn't particularly hard as long as you know what you're doing. Let's start by going over the main mechanics of the dungeon, those being the viral buffs. These drop from enemies in the encounters and are very similar to the Deep Stone Crypt buffs, but with some major changes in how they interact with the player and environment. The biggest change is that they only last 60 seconds. If the timer runs out, you will die. The only way to remove them or refresh the timer is by storing them in a augmentation terminal or stepping through a cleansing gate. Augmentation terminals are the white machines that you can walk up to and interact with, and work nearly the same as Deep Stone Crypt. These will store the viral buff if you currently have one, or will give you the viral buff stored in the terminal. When a buff is stored in a terminal, it is also shared among other terminals across the encounter. Unlike Deep Stone Crypt, there are multiple sets of terminals, meaning you can store and share multiple buffs at the same time. Cleansing gates are the translucent, whitish walls you will find in doorways. Walking through these will remove your viral buffs. Onto the actual buffs themselves, the red operator buff remains mostly unchanged. Shoot the correct panels around the map to activate them, but if you shoot the wrong panel, you will instantly die. The yellow scanner buff is not based on sight, but is based on your minimap. If you have the buff, you'll notice yellow icons on your minimap. As you step close to them, they will either disappear or turn white. Turning white indicates that this is the correct option, while disappearing indicates that it is incorrect. The blue suppressor buff is entirely based on your grenade ability. Activating your grenade will now spawn in a replicant at your location. After spawning it in, you are able to destroy the replicant by shooting at it to activate the suppressor buff against any target within its vicinity. Another set of mechanics taking from Deep Stone Crypt is the radiation and nuclear core mechanics. Nuclear cores are red glowing balls that you must pick up and place in specific containers. While carrying those nuclear cores, you will not be able to double jump, and you will slowly gain stacks of radiation. You can gain up to 9 stacks of radiation and be fine, but as soon as you gain the 10th, you will die. Fortunately, you are able to drop nuclear cores or have a teammate grab them from you. As long as you aren't holding the nuclear core, you won't gain radiation. That doesn't mean just leave them lying about though. Nuclear cores can only be set on the ground for 60 seconds before they explode, wiping the team. Deposit them into a nuclear box to get rid of them safely and forever. Onto the intro sequence. As you walk into the first room, look for fallen enemies carrying the scanner and operator buffs. Pick up the scanner buff and go around to each panel. Some will turn white on your minimap, indicating that they are the correct ones to shoot. With the operator buff, shoot each one that becomes white. The door will eventually open up and you'll be able to make your way to the first encounter. So the bulk of the first encounter will consist of the scanner and operator buffs, with enough augmentation terminals to store both. Interact with the big ball in the front of the room to start the encounter. When you do this, enemies will spawn, but what you want to look out for is the brig in the center of the room. Defeating this enemy will eventually spawn in a vandal with the scanner buff. Kill him and pick up the scanner. This opens 3 doors around the arena, which means you have 3 paths to choose from: brain, heart, or lungs. Each path must be finished to complete the encounter. Each pathway consists of 2 sections. The first full of orange bar dregs with shrapnel cannons, as well as 2 invisible wire vandal mini-bosses. The second is split off by a fallen energy shield and contains respawning shanks, 2 more invisible vandal mini-bosses, and a vandal holding the operator debuff. To open up the second section, you must kill all enemies in the first section. Once you get into the second section, have whoever is holding the scanner debuff deposit the buff into one of the nearby augmentation terminals. The timer on your buff is probably getting pretty low about now, so you want to prioritize it over the enemies in the room. When you defeat the 2 mini bosses in this room, have 2 players pick up the operator and scanner buffs. The scanner will go up to each panel and see if it is the correct one. The operator will follow the scanner around and shoot the panel they are next to when they say it's the correct panel. Each room has 6 total panels, and only 4 of those panels are the correct ones. After all 4 panels have been shot, a nuclear core will begin to spawn. Both scanner and operators should deposit their buffs at the augmentation terminals for later use. Then one person needs to pick up the nuclear core. Your goal is to take the nuclear core back to where you started the encounter and deposit them into the nuclear boxes in the front of the room. But to block your pathway, many enemies will have spawned. In the first section of the pathways, the 2 invisible mini-bosses will respawn, along with several dusk-fueled shanks. In the central room, a brig will spawn. This brig has blocked the nuclear boxes with a fallen energy shield. Defeat the brig to lower the shield and deposit the nuclear core. Your next goal is to repeat this for the remaining 2 pathways. This will be nearly the same as the first with 2 minor differences. The largest being when you complete your 3rd and final pathway. As you enter the central room, you'll notice the brig that usually stands there is now a much larger brig with a greater health pool. The second difference is how you get the buffs. As long as you have deposited the scanner and operator buffs into the augmentation terminals, they will both appear in the second section of each pathway. If you accidentally lose a buff, don't worry about it. A vandal with the buff will spawn in their original location, scanner spawning in the middle of the central room, while operator will spawn in the second section of any pathway. Before you start the encounter, here's some tips you should be using. For starters, one of the best weapons to use in this encounter is Parasite. You gain stacks incredibly quickly, and brigs and mini-bosses absolutely falter under its damage. In each section, I'm usually taking out both in one shot and have maximum stacks before the next set. When you're picking up nuclear cores, try to gain Amplified. This negates the double jump penalty in a way by increasing your base jump height. It also increases your speed, which makes it much easier to dodge and weave through enemies' attacks. Speaking of nuclear cores, don't be afraid to drop them. You have 60 seconds of total time for them to spend on the ground. This is plenty enough time for you to drop it, defeat every enemy in a room, and deposit the core. The next transit area is based on Five Nights at Freddy's nuclear cores and the upcoming boss. The boss travels around the corridors, attacking as he pleases. He will throw out smaller orange servitors that will eventually explode, so stay far away from those. He can also tether on you if you're in direct line of sight, killing you just after 4 seconds. And finally, he has the regular boss servitor melee attack, which deals a lot of damage very quickly if you get too close to him, which keep in mind this is forced in the tight corridors. The nuclear cores are almost the same as the last encounter, you just need to pick one up and deposit them into a numbered nuclear box. It has to be done sequentially, starting at 1 and ending at 5. You get nuclear cores by defeating captains, and new captains spawn each time you deposit a nuclear core. The Five Nights at Freddy's mechanic involves a buff called Power Reserves to open and close doors. Just be a nice guest and close any door behind you and you'll be fine. Overall, the gameplay is pretty linear, so I'm just gonna let it play out for reference. The second encounter of this dungeon is defeating the servitor and involves the operator and suppressor buffs. The first thing you should look at is the wall directly in front of the rally flag. Along both front and back sides of this wall will be 10 panels with the numbers 0 through 9. Here's a diagram of these numbers which will be useful for later. Start the encounter by moving towards the front of the room and get to killing. Eventually, a sniper shank holding the operator buff will spawn. Take him out and deposit the operator buff in the augmentation terminal near the number wall. After that, a machine priest will spawn. Defeat him to be teleported to the second floor along with the boss. After defeating all the enemies on the second floor, sniper shank holding the suppressor buff will spawn. One of you will need to pick up this buff and get near the boss. Activate your grenade ability and spawn in a replicant. Destroy this replicant by shooting it to split up the boss into multiple regular sized servitors. Here's where you want to pay close attention. 2 of these servitors will be glowing a bit brighter and have 4 dots on their face. When you see them, you want to make note of the number at the end of their names. After this, drop back into the main area by going into the hole behind where the boss once stood. Don't worry about the suppressor buff running out of time. There is a cleansing gate you'll pass through. Now you just need to wait for another machine priest to spawn and repeat the suppressing process. When you have 4 numbers, grab the operator buff from the augmentation terminal and shoot the panels on the back wall with the numbers you took down. Once again, here's the map of the arena to make it a bit easier for you. After hitting the 4 panels, all the enemies in the room will despawn and the Suppressor Sniper Shank will spawn. Defeat the Shank and grab the Suppressor buff quickly, as the boss is about to teleport into the middle of the room. As soon as he does, suppress him with your replicant. This will once again split him into multiple enemies and allows you to deal damage. You don't have to focus on a specific one, just damage them all. As for specific tips, Hunter's Shadow Shot should be an easy pick for this boss. Deadfall makes any enemy tethered share damage to one another along with debuffing them. Since the boss consists of multiple enemies, you should be able to deal significantly more damage. Speaking of the boss's unique properties, any area effect attack will be able to hit the boss multiple times in a single shot or use. Some of the best supers I've seen for this are Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, and Behemoth Stasis Crystal Spam. Consecration Spam is also a good choice as it can ignite multiple servitors at once, chunking the boss's health bar. Weapon-wise, Parasite is a really good choice. You can gain up to 20 stacks, fire it in the middle of the crowd, and deal a lot of damage. The next traversal area is just platforming mixed with lightning strikes. Watch your step and don't stand in the yellow rings or you'll die. Now for the final boss, Atrax. The first room consists of gaining 3 viral buffs. Suppressor will spawn along with 2 clones of Atrax with a radiation shield. This shield makes her invincible and will give you stacks of radiation debuff if you're in close proximity. The way you get rid of these shields is through Suppressor. After those 2 clones are dealt with, 2 more will spawn along with a scanner and operator buff. The scanner buff will go next to the pillars near the center of the room where you find the correct pillar. One side of the pillar will have a blue number on it. This number indicates which panels the operator should shoot. Here's a rough map of all 16 panels around the room, 4 for each number. The operator has to shoot all 4 red numbers that are the same as the blue number on the correct pillar. When this is accomplished, a side of the room's lights will start flashing red. Quickly deposit your buffs in the augmentation terminals and jump down elevator shafts on the side of the room with the flashing red lights. Keep following these lights until you're in the room with Atrax. In this room, everyone should pick up their buffs and get ready for their mechanics. The Suppressor will do as they did in the first room and work on eliminating the Atrax clones of the radiation shielding. The operator will go around the room and find 4 panels to shoot. This will spawn in several Atrax clones similar to the boss fight in Deepstone Crypt. Now it's Scanner's job to find which is the Atrax with a nuclear core. The mechanics are the same as before. Approach the clones and look at the minimap. They will either disappear or become white. If it is white, then the whole team can shoot it. Killing it will drop the nuclear core on the floor. And from there you have about 30 seconds to place it in the box before a wipe happens. Before you pick it up, deposit your viral buffs in the augmentation terminals. If you don't, you can recollect them, but it's a bit of pain finding the buffs down there. Once you deposited them, pick up the nuclear core and get in the bunker in the center of the room. Placing the nuclear core in there will break half of Atrax's shield and get you halfway to damage phase. After the small wait inside the bunker, you must proceed through the tripwire infested corridor. Be careful not to die and be careful of the radioactive Atrax clones chasing you in there. On the other side, follow the red lights again into a similar looking room as before. You're going to repeat the same process of breaking your shield yet again. Follow the exact steps as last time, but don't worry about putting your viral buffs in the augmentation terminals, as they will be lost either way. Now that that's finally done, you can return through the door you came through and into the central room where you'll find a teleporter. Take that into the starting room and go to the surface through a massive door in the back of the room. This is where you'll be dealing damage. The real Atrax is the largest of all the clones and has a big scary purple mouth. As the fight rages on, lightning will rain from the heavens and she will spawn in more and more clones. Some will stand in the front and fire their rifles, while some will charge you with their swords. One of these clones will drop a nuclear core when defeated. This is a sign to go towards the bunker doors on the left side of the arena. A large pulse of energy will soon come out of the structure in the background, instantly killing you. The only way to avoid this is to be in the bunker and place the nuclear core within it. Afterwards, you have a little bit more DPS, but prepare for another energy pulse. This time you'll have have to descend into the space station to end your damage phase. Afterwards, you just have to repeat the whole process until Atrax dies. Keep in mind, she's not a pushover. In an ironic twist, Atrax has become a damage spun. I was using my whole heavy reserves and most of my special every damage phase, and it still took 3 whole damage phases to finish the fight. In the end, I ended up with about 7.7 million damage and my teammates with about 4.2 million each, for a grand total of 16 million health. For weaponry, I'd highly recommend using a lithium. As mentioned earlier, I was using my whole ammo supply, and the only way I was able to effectively refill it was thanks to a lithium. Shotguns also work wonders in this encounter. Everything is close range, and those are radioactive Atrax clones die in 2 to 3 shots. Heavy wise, use a grenade launcher if you have it. They are buffed so much this season, it is ridiculous. And that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching it through, and I hope this helped you complete the dungeon. Hopefully you got Icebreaker. I personally didn't. I've done 2 attempts so far, no luck yet. Hopefully soon though. If you stuck this far around, well, hopefully you like the content, so make sure to subscribe to see future content. I've been trying to put out a video all week for Stasis subclass build, but I've been put backlogged by other things like testing exotics and all that, and now this dungeon came out, so I had to do that. So video out soon. It's almost done. Yippee. Have a good one, y'all. Thanks for watching and goodbye.